Please be upstanding for the chairman.
Please be seated. Oh, hey, hang on a minute. Give me the low down bum seat. The dodgy one. That's a good. Aye, give me the dodgy seat. Aye. It's no like trying to set us up, is there? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's council meeting. Can we have apologies for absence? Yeah, we've got Councillor Allen, Councillor Linda Bell, Gary Bell, Kerwin, Wendy Lott and Pamela Brooks. Anyone else? Yes.
Councillor Rankin is coming from work and will be a bit late.
Right. Can members sign the relevant attendance sheets so we know you're there? Right. Declarations of interest. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a non-registrable personal interest in the business case on page 19, which is responding to rising complex needs because of the support provided by the authority to a family member. I've taken legal advice and I'm allowed to remain in the meeting and to vote.
Thank you. Councillor Early.
I'd like to declare a non-registrable interest in relation to item 3 in the main bundle, Appendix J, Section 5.5, which is to do with a review of current funding to voluntary organisations, as I'm a trustee of North Tyneside Carer Centre.
Thank you. Did I see someone else over there? Oh, God. Councillor Brady.
Thank you. I have a non-registrable interest in the matter of social care, in that my aunt is in residential care in the borough and the borough contributes to her care.
Thank you. Councillor Waggett-Fairley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare non-registered interest for the same reasons as Councillor Early. I'm chair of the same charity. Thank you.
Councillor Maureen Madden.
Yeah, I'd like to register an interest because I have two relatives who work for the local authority, and also I'm a member of a voluntary sector organisation that gets some funding from the local authority.
Thank you. Councillor Thurlaway.
It's a registrable declaration that I work for Parkside Care, who provide social care for elderly people.
Thank you. Councillor Drummond.
It's declared non-registrable interest. My wife works for the voluntary sector. It's funded by the council, partly.
Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to declare non-registrable interest. I've got a couple of family members that are employed by the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a family member who works for the local authority.
Councillor Samuel.
I too have a family member who works for the local authority, so I'll just join the club.
Anyone?
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Burdis. Carol Burdis.
Thank you. Again, non-registrable interest. Have a family member working for the authority.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Burdis. Anyone else? Oh, yes.
Thank you. I wasn't going to because I don't think it's under discussion tonight, but I work for an organisation which receives funding from North Tyneside Council, but I don't think it's going to be relevant. But just for the sake of transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think I might have one as well because my brother works for Kia. So could everybody who's declared interests fill in the cards that's in front of you? Thank you very much. Right. We need to read this bit, don't we? Yeah, right. The monitoring officer has written to all members to set out the position with regard to interest in this meeting of the council that will deal with the budget proposals. In relation to registrable interests held where a member has been appointed to an authority, outside body, dispensations have been granted to allow them to participate in the vote at this meeting in relation to registrable personal interests and their membership of that body, right? Where members have been granted such dispensations, they are not required to declare these. I think that's what's happened tonight. So we've actually done what I've just read out. A list of the appointments is on all the desks in front of you, so you know what you're actually linked to. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 3, and unfortunately I've got quite a bit to say before you get to start here. Before I outline the proposal of tonight's meeting, I would like to announce that whilst members will be invited to ask questions of the Cabinet Council tax requirement and budget proposals, members are reminded that they have already had the opportunity to raise questions of technical nature with officers in advance of the meeting. In addition to which, members of the Budget Scrutiny Group have had a chance to ask technical questions during the scrutiny of the budget proposals. Questions asked at the meeting will be responded to verbally as far as possible. However, if there are any questions of a technical nature requiring an officer response, a written response will be provided to all members of the Council no later than the close of business on the 14th of February. I would ask members to please observe the Code of Conduct and to treat others with respect when asking or responding to questions. Now move on to the purpose of the meeting, which is quite obvious, but I do have a piece to read out. The Council's constitution sets out in its budget and policy framework procedural rules the process for setting the Council budget, in particular the Council tax level or requirement. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to enable the Cabinet to submit to Council their proposals for the estimates of the amounts for the calculation of the Council tax requirement for 2019-20, the General Fund revenue budget proposals on which these calculations will be based, and submitted to Council in support of these estimates. The submission of Cabinet's estimates of amounts for 2019-20 General Fund revenue budget starts the Council process in setting the Council tax levels. The Cabinet's proposals are submitted to this meeting for the Council to receive, but will be formally moved and seconded at the reconvened Council meeting on the 21st of February. As I've already said, there is an opportunity for members to ask questions about Cabinet's proposals at this meeting. Between the submission of the proposals to this meeting and the consideration that will take place at the Council meeting on the 21st of February, members are able to submit objections to the Cabinet's proposals. Any objection received will be considered at the reconvened meeting on the 21st of February. Members are now in receipt of the reports containing the Cabinet's proposals in relation to the council tax requirement for 2019-20, general fund, revenue budget. Can I now ask Councillor Ray Glindon, Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, to introduce the Cabinet's proposals? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to submit, I'm on a dodgy chair as well, by the way, so if I collapse, it's not because I faint, I think it's because the chair's collapsed. I'm pleased to submit to the Council the Cabinet's 4-year draft budget proposals for 2019 to 2023. As you all know, we've been developing these budget proposals since the summer. Cabinet has been in a very difficult position with regard to the options to prepare a balanced budget when bringing together the impact of reduced funding over a number of years alongside additional unfunded burdens and demand-led pressures we have faced over the last few years. At the time I presented the initial budget to Cabinet on the 26th of November last year, we were still awaiting a provisional settlement, and as such the draft budget was based on a range of assumptions. The provisional settlement was issued on the 30th of December, and the final settlement was issued on the 29th of January this year, with no material changes. Despite extensive lobbying in an effort to increase local government funding, there was no improvement in the provisional settlement. Council needs to remember that central government, when considering our funding requirements, assumes that we will make a suggested increase in council tax, and they will continue to do so in their assessment of the baseline funding needed by the authority. By bringing forward these council tax raising powers in the settlement, the government has recognised the calls for urgent need to help councils tackle some of the immediate social care pressures they face. However, this shifts the burden of tackling a national crisis into councils and their residents. In effect, we actually get the blame for putting up, and the other ones it's short funding, but by me we're having to do that. The settlement sets out the overall increase of what is known as the core spending power at 2.8% for 1920 and 3.8% for the 4-year settlement period as a whole. However, that is largely due to an increase in council tax. We welcome the additional money announced in the 2018 budget for children and adult services. However, these additional resources do not cover the additional costs that we face in the provision of essential services. The budget and financial plan included here today sets out saving proposals over 3.5 million for 1920 and close to 27.2 million over the next 4 years of our medium-term financial plan. As part of our budget, we've had to make a difficult decision to increase council tax in line with central government advice. This is to ensure we can continue to deliver the services that residents need and maintain a sustainable financial position for the authority. Therefore, the proposed council tax increase included in the budget proposals for 1920 is 2.99%. You all know the authority delivers a vast range of services, resulting in a complex and sometimes volatile budget. It means we have to be in a position to understand and manage risks associated with the services we provide. We continue to face challenges of maximising the use of available resources to ensure the borough continues to grow through investment, that essential services continue to be delivered. Achieving this balance grows more difficult every year. We can see no easing of the relentless pressure to secure efficiencies in the current financial environment. A key part of the financial planning process involves submitting what is known as NNDR1, a return to central government about business rates for 2018-2019. We submitted the 2019-20 NNDR as required, so there will be a minor update in resources as part of the Mayor's, which will be part of the Mayor's amendment letter when she sends it out. This will be issued when the remainder of the outstanding information is received in respect to some of the grants and some joint service budget. The report authorises the Mayor to make any final amendments arising from these and any other areas of outstanding information. 2019-20 is the final year of the 4-year settlement. The financial planning horizon is particularly unclear as consultation continues on the fair funding review to move to 75% business rate retention. This uncertainty makes financial planning very difficult, and therefore future years' financial plans are based on a range of assumptions. This includes, for example, assumptions on the continuation of significant areas of funding, which includes the Better Care Fund and the Improved Better Care Fund. Despite challenges, we continue to focus on achieving the overall policy objectives shaped by our North Tyneside plan. We will continue to look to make a difference to residents by making the council work smarter, continue to put people at the centre of what we do, and ensuring the organisation maximises how it uses public money to achieve residents' priorities, including delivery of economic success and jobs for the borough. This year's budget engagement to date has included feedback and proposals being sought through the Council's website and through a range of focus groups with different stakeholders, including residents, staff, businesses and partner organisations. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Budget Study Group for their response to the Cabinet's initial and draft proposals. Also, can I thank the Mayor, the Cabinet and all officers who took part in delivering the budget before us today. Members have had the opportunity to ask technical questions of officers. It's my intention to issue a written response to any technical questions raised here tonight, unless I can answer them, but we'll just see as we go by. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Glindon. I'd now like to invite members to ask questions in relation to the Cabinet's council tax requirement and budget proposals. I will take questions on the report section by section and on each of the business cases in turn. The order in which questions will be taken has been circulated around the council chamber. In that questions on the business cases will be taken straight after the questions on Appendix C to the report, which relates to the efficiency savings. Members are requested to identify the page numbers to which their questions relate before asking the questions. Following questions on the report and the business cases, members will then be invited to ask questions, any final questions which are not in the report, or they think not in the report, related to specific pages appearing in the papers for tonight's meeting. I'd like to reinforce the code of conduct as far as treating people with respect. I think it's very important in a meeting like this that we do not get into a debacle and we try to act in a respectful meaning way with each other. Questions will be responded to verbally as far as possible at this meeting. However, if there are any questions of a technical nature requiring an officer response, a written response, as I said before, will be provided by the 14th of February, and that will be reported to all members. So any technical questions, all members will get a copy of the response. I'll now invite questions on the main council report. Yeah, I forgot to tell you what pages it was. 3 to 11. Any questions on the main? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to page 11, it appears the report hasn't been signed off by any of the officers who should have signed it off. I'm wondering why that's the case, that it hasn't been signed off, and what effect does this have on the status of the report tonight?
Councillor Glendon.
Chair, it's obvious the report, I mean, it's not obvious because you're quite right, there's nobody signing it off. The report wouldn't be here unless it had been signed off. Somebody's put the wrong page in, but I can guarantee you the report has been signed off. We noticed that as well, but it was too late because it had been sent out. So.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 6, paragraph 1.5.7, paragraph 1.5.6, at the Cabinet meeting on the 28th of January, the elected Mayor announced two specific issues with specific changes. Can the Cabinet member explain how this complies with the process? There are specific proposals here, but there's no specific costs. Yet we are in the middle of a budget setting process. The page is it's page 6, and the paragraph is 1.5.6 and going on to 1.5.7.
Yes, the meeting, the Mayor had the authority to make amendments to the budget that was put to the Cabinet, depending on the outcomes of the budget consultation and other issues that were raised with the Mayor. The full cost of these initiatives were contained within the overall envelope, which didn't require any alterations to the figures at the end, and have in fact come out of the Service Improvement Fund, part of an Environment Fund, and some of it will be capital.
Is it not surprising, Chairman, that these matters weren't raised with the overview and scrutiny group that was looking at the budget, which met only a few days before the announcement?
Well, I think you've had an answer for the reason, and that is the answer. I mean, you're not going to get another answer, so, you know. Anyone else got any? Councillor Wallace?
Page 8, Chairman, paragraph 1.10. It refers to the background information, but there's a failure to give links to several of the items. Why is that the case?
We'll just answer that one, Raiden.
Anyone else? Councillor Wallace again?
And in that same paragraph, 1.10, item C, it refers to the 2018 local government finance settlement. Is that the right year, or ought it to be 1920? 2019-20.
It's 18 because the basis for the budget.
Any more questions? No? Then can we move on to pages 12 to 27? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Chair. Referring to page 16, first paragraph marked R, authorising the elected mayor to make any final amendments to the Cabinet's proposals. I'm just wondering if I could be told when that's likely to be.
Chair, that's, we're still waiting for precepts and everything to come in, so that would be included in part of the budget process. The Mayor's always had the right to alter a budget. It's nothing new, it's happened for years and years and years. Well, as long as we've had a Mayor.
Have you got another question, Councillor Austin?
I have, yes, thank you. It's the same page, 16, and it's T. And that, let's have a look. Yeah, to consider further comments received from residents after the Cabinet report was produced. Obviously, that was a fairly short timescale. Could I ask how further comments were encouraged, how they were made to the council, and how many were received?
Yes, I mean, via the budget engagement process, we did the engagement throughout the year, and it reflected in some of the comments that came forward, and that is the result that we had.
Chair, can I just carry on from that? This paragraph actually refers to further comments received after the Cabinet report was drafted, so we're not talking about what happened during the course of the rest of the year earlier. This refers to sort of additional comments, and I would have thought with them being fairly recent, we should be able to get an answer as to how many there were and what was done to encourage more comments.
I think with you referring to the 21st of February, I mean, throughout the year, as I say, and I will repeat that, throughout the year we have engaged with our residents, and some of the comments had come and alluded to some of the stuff that ended up being considered. When we did do the consultation, it did refer to some of those stuff in that envelope, and we won't know any further till the 21st of February.
Sorry, Chair, but...
I think you've had an answer. I think what the answer was that basically they're waiting for any comments that will still come. And as long as they come by the 21st of February, those comments will be taken into consideration. Do you have anything else?
So Am I right in assuming that there haven't been any so far, otherwise you would be able to tell us those now?
Well, I think that's possibly the case. I don't think numbers is anything to go by, to be honest, but as long as things come in by the 21st so that they can be considered at that particular meeting, or prior to the 21st, because the cut-off date, as you know, for the budget proposal from the likes of yourselves, I think it's 2 days before, isn't it? So I would imagine that it would be 2 days before for any residents as well. So it would be by roughly the 19th.
Right.
Did I see your hand up, Councillor Wallace?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. On page 14 in 1.112, it refers to the Cabinet report for the 26th of November last year. When the agenda was circulated, there was a holding report for the finance report, for the budget report, which said that it was just a holding report, an initial report, to allow time for the government's autumn statement, which will be published on the 26th of November, to be assessed for the final report. What assessment was made following that statement? What was published on the 26th of November? What autumn statement?
Chair, we're not quite sure. I'm sure you said 11512, but it's not 1112 you're talking about.
It's 1112 on page 14, Chairman.
We've had the autumn statement, if that's what you're talking about.
That's the Housing Revenue Account.
That's Housing Revenue. Chair, the Housing Revenue Account isn't to be discussed because it's been agreed by Cabinet anyway.
I'm referring to the report of the 26th of November, which is referred there. There was a holding report issued which referred to the government's autumn statement. I'm wondering what assessment was made in the preparation of this report as a result of that autumn statement. What autumn statement was made?
Just so we can answer, I'm looking at page 14, 1.1.12. It's clearly it's different to it's about the Housing Revenue Account.
Referring to the holding report that was issued for the whole of the agenda for the 26th of November.
It's not mentioned in paragraph 1.1.12.
Well, the report of the 26th of November is. Okay, I'll ask it later on, Chairman, then.
The Housing Revenue Account's been dealt with.
Right. Have you any more questions? No? Then we'll move on to pages 28 to 33. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 32. And it's paragraph 2.1.3. Again, about the engagement about the budget. It's referring to July to September 2018. So for that period, I wondered how many people took part in the engagement. I have about 5 questions, actually. I don't know if you want me to do them individually or altogether. Would be quite a lot to remember. So the first is how many people took part between July and September 2018?
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't think that the councillors would have that number, so obviously we'll have to give you that in writing.
Right. Well, they have based their decisions...
Yes, but I wouldn't think they'd have it at their fingertips at this particular moment, would they? You know.
I don't see why not.
On to your next question.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
somebody's
can
going to
I
have a
just say
stab.
on that, on any statistical information, I would prefer every member get a copy. So I will reply in writing.
Right, thank you.
Right.
Can I ask, and again, this will have to be a general answer, I appreciate that, but was it usually the same people several times, or did you have several sessions with different people, different residents?
I think, Chair, this is a very, very difficult catch-out question here, because I'm going to be very clear with the member. The engagement happens throughout the year, We do the budget process within the timescales, which is all wrote in the report for anyone to read, even the general public who actually have been consulted on the budget engagement. So I do think to say, like, did they respond more than once, or did they, you know, like, that's possible, but we haven't got that statistic, and I haven't got that statistic in front. But all I know is that we do and we've had a broad aspect of how we engage with our people, whether it's out and about, whether it's online, and whether it's been face-to-face. And yes, we've varied it. It's not been the same as last year, and it's not the same as the year before. It has changed year in, year out, on the recommendations of the residents. And we listen to the residents, and we do it the way they want to. And we listen to yourselves as well when we come to this, because every year you do try to, and I'm going to say it, you do try to pick holes in how we conduct our budget engagement. Quite rightly, very important thing to do. However, I have invited yourselves, every member of this chamber, I have invited you to take part. Any suggestions you have would be welcomed, and I've not had any suggestions from any of the members other than residents out there, and it's the residents we are listening to, and it's the residents that are reflected in the report. And as to, you know, like, did they respond once, did they respond twice? I haven't got that information in front of me.
Chair, with respect, that's not what I said, and I did say at the very beginning that I didn't expect anything other than a very general answer, because I know it's not possible to sort of know definite figures on that. But this report, 2.1.3, specifies between July and September 2018, not the rest of the year, and it claims there was an extensive programme of engagement through the big community conversation. Now, I'm assuming the Cabinet member would have been present at those conversations and would therefore be hopefully aware whether she was seeing the same faces over and over again, or whether there was a mix of different people. And that's all I was asking.
I think the reality is, and I'll try to answer this one, the reality is that the engagement department go out and are out all year round, carrying out various surveys and in different areas. The possibility of a duplication by an individual is there, but I would reckon it is very slim given the way it actually works. Just let me finish. As for the Cabinet member being involved in every single engagement session, I think would be absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. But so can you move on to your next question?
Yes. Can I ask what specifics the residents were asked to comment on between July and September 2018? And I'll reinforce, I haven't written July to September 2018. This is your report. You have specified that date in this paragraph, and that's purely what I want to know. At that point, what were people asked to comment on?
There was a wide range of issues that residents were asked to comment on during the budget engagement period, when it was out and about, I call them. It's big community conversations, and it was wide range. And they were also asked if they had anything they wanted to offer in terms of how we saved money, what the efficiencies could be, especially with what's going on with the cuts from central government, and they were wide ranging. But I'm sure you've got all of that information, Councillor Austin, in the report. This is not the first time we've had a report back about budget engagement or about any form of engagement that we have done out and about, and I think the engagement team have done a really good job.
Chair, sorry, there are another couple of questions. Was there any engagement specifically around the issue of parking?
Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question there, but can I just be reminded by yourself? Where are we on your report? As you said, we're going through this.
Pages 28 to 33.
Yeah, so is this engagement approach, because we're now getting into the budget engagement proper, which is on page 135, and if the member would like to refer to that, then she'll get a lot of answers from there.
Chair, I'm referring to page 32, as I said, and it talks about the extensive programme of engagement between July and September 2018. I think it's reasonable.
Well, I
at
think
this
you've
point
had
to
the
ask
answer about the extensive engagement. I think you're now getting into the technicalities, and I think, unfortunately, you're slipping into the report further down. So I would suggest that you write that question down and bring it in the report further down.
Certainly.
Right? And did you have a last question?
Yeah, the last question is, since at this time, July to September 2018, there were no business cases and no specific proposals, what format did the engagement take? Was it very general, or?
I think you've already asked that question in another form. So can we move on to the next person's questions?
Thank you.
Did I see your hand up, Councillor Wallace? No? Oh, that makes a change. you must have been combing your hair or something. Thank you. Anyone else with any questions on 28 to 33? Right, then we'll now move on to 34 to 40. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. Page 36, I think it comes under 3.3.1, our places. It says North Tyneside has welcomed 5.71 million visitors. First question is, how do we know that we had 5.71 million visitors?
Obviously, apart from the Mayor greeting everyone as they came in and walked along the seafront, there is a procedure where we actually do monitor and track the number of visitors, and that will be answered by the relevant department in a written answer to you.
Do you have another question, Councillor McIntyre?
No.
Councillor Brockburn?
Brockbank. Thank you very much.
I know
I'm new. You'll get it, Tommy. You'll get it.
I'll get it right one of these days.
I know
yes.
you will.
Apologies.
Page 35, 36, point 3.3.1, third bullet point, talking about educational achievement. Obviously, it's a great accolade to the children and staff of the schools in North Tyneside that there are certain national movements towards children in North Tyneside doing very well. I'm just quite curious about that third point on page 36, at key stage 4, gap is closed compared to last year. I'm just wondering, how much is that gap closed in terms of the number of children, and how's that been done? It just seems a tad vague when we're talking about, you know, when North Tyneside's vision is very much about very specifically children, individuals doing well. I'm just wondering how many children, how is that being measured, and how is it going to be measured in the future?
I think that's a technical question, and we'll supply a written answer.
Right. Any more questions? Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. Page 37, 3.6, it refers to the efficiency statement. I'm wondering why that statement is not included in the report. It was in the November report, and I'm wondering why it has not been set out in this report when we're considering it tonight.
The efficiency statement, as updated in line with the statement from the government, is included in, if you look at the document at the back, I mean, you mentioned the pages before, where it says associated documents, and not all the documents associated with this are contained in this one report, and we'd have expected people, if they had an issue on that, to have gone back and picked the document up.
Thank you.
Well, Chairman, I'm wondering if it's because it actually shows that the core spending power of the council is actually increasing, and I'm wondering if that's the reason for its absence.
I think you've already gotten an answer, and it may be worthwhile asking that question at the end, where you have the opportunity under the relevant area.
It isn't there to ask about, Chairman.
Is it not? All right. Well-
Sorry, Chair, but they've asked the question twice. If you remember when you're back to pages 3 to 11, on page 8 it asked about the background information. It's clearly in there, says the efficiency statement and cumulative impact assessments. It talks about all the various statements that were involved in it. All of those aren't in the report here. They're there for reference. And you already asked that question.
Right.
And
Do you have another question
specifically,
then?
there's no link to it, Chairman.
Do you have another question?
It's called the
No.
website.
34 to 40. No more questions? Sorry,
I'll just answer that last one about the
yes, if you can.
about the score, the core spending. It's a technical question, which we'll gladly give them in writing. But in a nutshell, the new grants for social care just about offset the loss in the rate support grant. So the increase is a result of increase in council tax.
Right.
Which provides a total increase in core spending power.
Still an increase in council tax forced upon us by your government.
Brockbank. Yeah. Page 39, Chair, 3.8.2, new homes bonus. I'm just curious, obviously, as a councillor for Monkston South, the 3,000 homes that are going to be built in my ward and between my ward and another ward. The new homes bonus, how much does the council exactly expect to receive from that dividend?
Chair, we've got no idea. It depends on developers. New homes bonus, if a developer wants to go ahead and build, he'll go ahead and build. If he doesn't, we'll rely on them. We'll just take a judgment that they may start, we might put a figure which is under, we might put a figure which is over. We're just down to the developers for that.
Any more questions? No? Then can we move on to 41, 48 pages? Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Yeah, page 41, 4.1.3. The report mentions that there's been some economic growth. Could a more specific sort of idea of that be given? I don't mean actual figures or anything, but some is a bit wishy-washy. And it also seems very downbeat about the local economy, whereas page 36 is very enthusiastic about the economy, and I'm wondering which is correct.
What we're talking about there is the growth in business, and we've got a good business unit which is bringing businesses into North Tyneside. But obviously, on the other hand, we've got appeals against the business rates, which one can cut the other one out. So, at the end of the day, the appeals have got to go ahead, which are held by an independent panel. I think it's they call them? It's a government department anyway that does them. So we don't know how they're going to go. But basically, business within North Tyne at this moment of time, because we're not talking about Brexit yet, is sort of doing well, but obviously I don't know what you want to hear, but that's the only answer I'm giving you.
I'm sure it'll get even better after Brexit. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Paragraph 4.4.4 on page 44, all the fours. The final paragraph in that paragraph refers to the additional 25% business rates that are going to be retained as part of the new arrangement. Is the Cabinet Member able to give us at this stage some idea of what that money is expected to be spent on?
It's going to be retained by the North Tyne Authority, the extra 25%. What it's going to be spent on, it depends when the mayor gets in post, I suppose, but I couldn't give you any idea of that. I mean, I'm not really involved with that, but the business 75% business rate retention pilot is only for 1 year anyway, so we're not guaranteed the year after, so it's an open-ended thing by the government. So.
Yes, Councillor Wallace.
Further down the same page, Chairman, paragraph 4.5.1, there are bullet points at the end. The first one says that it is assuming no increase in council tax for the years 2021 through to 2022 to 23. Yet on page 12, referring to the medium-term plans, it includes an increase of 1.99% in council tax. So why is this inconsistency?
It's not inconsistency, it's basically the government, we've got to have some sort of guideline to try and do a 4-year budget. And you know what the government said, if you use 1.99%, that should get you your growth over the coming years. But you know, next year, will the government say that? They might say, well, you want to put up 2.99%. Or they might come back and say, well, we'll pay for the council tax rise for you. Like it did a few years ago. But, you know, it's got to be a figure put in there so you've got a 4-year plan. It's not inconsistency. It's there for fact.
Chairman, surely it is inconsistent because on page 12 it says, the medium-term financial plan includes the government's recommended general council tax increase of 1.99% for the subsequent financial years. So I can't understand why that which is said to be included in the financial plan is not included in the first bullet point. It says no assumed council tax increase. Surely it is inconsistent.
I think the council has just answered the question for herself, but I'll get it in writing to her.
First to the table on one,
yeah.
That's all.
Did you have another question?
Yes, Chairman, on the following page, page 45. Chairman, I have several questions which relate to table 1. Starting with the top line, the council tax. The various figures are given for the current year, 1920, and so forth. In last year's budget, when we were discussing it this time last year, the figure for 1920 was 90 million. 0.1. It's now 91.6. The Cabinet member poured scorn, as did the several members opposite, upon our suggestion that the figure was much understated last year. Does he now accept that we were correct? The figure was much understated.
No.
Why is the figure so different then?
Well, basically, as I said to your colleague before, you know, it's an estimate on new council tax coming into the borough. We don't have any say in apart from the ones who are building within the business, we don't have any say in what developers will do. So you've got to take a best guess estimate in any particular time. That figure could have been a minus figure, or it could have been, as it stands there now, as a plus figure. But it's a best guess estimate. I mean, you know yourself, you've been a Cabinet of Finance before. An estimate, a budget is an estimate on the date it's written. And, you know, if we didn't put figures in there, we'd get wrong. If we put estimates in there, we're getting wrong now. But to be quite honest, there's got to be a figure goes in to cover it.
Chairman, last year it was predicted that the increase would be 283,000. We've actually seen an increase of 1.7 million. So the forecast was out by 500%. Isn't that pretty huge?
I would have thought we'd done very well, to be honest. But
to be out by 500%, okay.
See if the Cabinet member has got a response. No?
No, I mean, I think I've answered it. So, I mean, if she wants any more details, I'll get the officer to send the details out here.
Officer,
I don't want to get in arguments about this, like, so.
Looking at those same figures, in the November report, the figure, the estimate, was given at 91.857 million, but here it's 91.624. How have we lost so many houses in 2 months?
I'll do that in writing, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Going on to the estimated council tax surplus, in the November Cabinet report, it was only expected to be £1 million. How has it risen so dramatically to 1.365?
Table, are you reading further down?
Reading from the table, Chairman.
answered that question.
Already answered it.
No, I don't think so. This is my first question about council tax surplus, Chairman.
The third time you've asked us, actually.
No, Chairman, my first question is related to the first line, which was council tax. This question relates to the next line down, estimated council tax surplus, which the figure in 2019-20 is given at 1.365, yet that same figure in November was £1 million. I'm wondering how there's such a dramatic increase.
Chair, as it says on the line, it's an estimate, right? Again, going back to what Councillor Brocklebank said, we don't know what developers are going to do. So
Brockbank, Chairman.
Was it? Sorry. So I'm sorry, but I really apologise. I quite like you, actually.
Your career.
You know, we've got to put a figure in. That's our best guess for what developers are going to do. That may change throughout the year, may change to a positive or may change to a negative. But as it says, it's estimated council tax surplus. Estimated.
I'm sorry, Chairman. Council tax surplus has got nothing to do with what developers do. And
Chairman,
it's a bullet point above if you read it.
Chairman, there's a bullet point above the table that states it was
There's one chairman here. Just, if you're going to get involved, put your hand up at least and wait your turn.
Yes, I've seen the bullet point above. That said, it's based on the year-end forecast position as at the 30th of November. But 4 days before that, the position was described as £1 million. I'm asking why there's such a massive increase.
Chair, this is going to go on and on, so I'm going to get it answered in writing, okay?
Thank you very much, Councillor Glindon.
Okie doke, thank you, Chairman. Moving down to the next line, please, Chairman, in the same table, Table 1. This one starts off Revenue Support Grant. I'm wondering if the Cabinet Member can explain the figures for me for 2019 to 20. Why is that shown as zero?
What I said before was that 1920 we're taking part in that pilot, but there's no figures for 2021. But I'll get that answered in writing as well.
Sorry, Chairman, I think the Cabinet Member's misunderstood. There's no pilot scheme for revenue support grant that comes in each year. The pilot scheme relates to the business rates and the North of Tyne devolution. The revenue support grant is entirely different, and I can't understand. I'm wondering why there is zero shown for 1920.
Can I say no, it's not? Part of taking part in the revenue, the business rate retention is 75%, is that money replaces the revenue support grant that we normally get. So during the year it's pooled for the three, and the council will get up to the equivalent of what the revenue support grant would be. It's not until you come to the very end of 1920 you'll know if there's any surplus on that particular 25% business rate account, and it's at that stage that the North of Tyne Authority will then decide amongst themselves where that additional surplus will go. Therefore, it won't have any impact until 2021, any additional surplus that comes in. So part of the deal is, if you go for the 75%, that's the whole idea, is you get rid of rate support grant, which is what the 4-year programme was. So I think if you read the report properly, that's what it does.
So in the settlement, the 4-year settlement, when it announced that we were getting 11.198 for each of 4 years, the Cabinet Member saying that's not accurate. That in fact, the forecast is nothing.
If you remember, the initial forecast was that we went down to zero rate support grant because we then have 100% retention of business rates. That paper has still not been finalised, and that's why they're going through the pilots of a 75%. But part of the 75% had to be that you were a pooling authority and that it would replace your revenue support. It is not 25% extra money to spend. It is just a different way of raising the same amount you got on rate support grant. The future years, all that's happened is the officers have put in the assumed what would have been there, so we can have some idea of a medium-term financial plan. However, that is subject to the government agreeing through its fair funding and how it's going to fund authorities what the future will be. That's why there's a real big problem in looking ahead at the finances of the council, because there's such a lot of areas of uncertainty on future funding from the government. but it is part of the deal that the 25%, the extra money you get in the first place, replaces your rate support grant, and then any additions at the end of 1920 is considered by the Joint Authority for surplus back into the councils.
So on the following line, Chairman, the business rates, how has that shot up to 43 million in 2019-20?
Because you've got rid of your rate support grant, and that's the 25% of your business rates that you're coming in during the year. That's how it's replaced.
And yet there was no reference to this in the November report at all.
Can I just suggest that this may be a thing that should be answered in writing as a technical question? And right now, I'll just let Councillor O'Shea in here because he's had his hand up waving for hours.
Chair, we had this conversation at the Budget Scrutiny Group where Councillor Wallace was there because I asked very similar questions. So I don't know quite why she's raising these issues when she's been already told at the Budget Scrutiny Group.
No, Chairman. At the Budget Scrutiny Group, it was explained that the additional 25% would be retained by the North of Tyne Devolved Authority, and that it would not be directly spent in this borough, but that the borough would not directly have a say in that, when the money was not coming into North Tyneside's coffers.
As I've just said, we will have that answered in writing and hopefully you will get an acceptable answer.
Right. Well, could I, for clarification, please, Chairman, ask how it was in the November report, when the devolved arrangement and the 25% pooling was known about, how in the November report for the revenue support grant, did it show 11.198 million in the 2019-20 column, and yet 2 months later it's down to zero?
Well, I think once you get a technical answer, you will probably be able to work that one out. Hopefully. Right. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Hodgson?
This recent discussion has answered or nearly answered what I was going to ask.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Moving on to paragraph 4.6.
Could you pop your mic off, Councillor Hodgson?
Thank you. Moving on to paragraph 4.6 in the bullet point, the second bullet point refers to pay inflationary increases in pay based on an assumed 2% pay increase. How much has been allowed in that figure for the payments to staff, former staff, by way of compromise agreements, please?
I certainly couldn't tell you that because I never get to see compromise agreements, and I don't know whether officers would divulge that information, but I'll certainly put it to them to answer that in writing, as much as the kind of compromise agreement is there for a specific purpose.
Well, Chairman, I'm surprised that the Cabinet member doesn't know about it because there's been some huge sums. I mean, some £130,000 in 2 months this year, almost £250,000 recently in 1 year. I'm surprised there's no allowance for that.
If you already know the figure, why did you ask the question?
I'm asking how much has been allowed in that for next year.
The officer has the right here.
Thank you.
Councillor Brockbank, did I get it right?
You did. Well done, Chair.
Thank you.
The same point, 4.6.1, bullet point 3, increased demand for services. I'm just curious, and I appreciate this is going to be a technical question, I'm just curious how this qualitative analysis of increased required services for adult or for social care has been calculated, how much that looks like, and what that's going to look like over the coming year, whether there's any sort of analysis, qualitatively or otherwise, of need or increasing pressures. I'm just curious about that.
We'll give you that in writing because it's a bit complicated.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 46, it refers to second last paragraph, work continuing for the balance of the management savings. Can the Cabinet member tell me how much is yet to be saved and what work is being done to achieve that?
Well, his work is continuing. I can't give you a final figure, but we are busy working on it.
And secondly, Chairman, on that same page, the final sentence, why is there so much of the procurement savings target having to be carried forward?
If you remember last year when we did the procurement savings target, we said to Overview and Scrutiny that we believed it would still be difficult. However, the view of Overview and Scrutiny at the time was that we weren't being ambitious enough. So obviously we left at the figure we had, and you yourselves increased that efficiency target by a further $500,000. And we said that at the time there are procurement issues, mainly around that the pressure on the large areas of procurement that we have is an upward pressure, not a downward pressure, because a lot of them are staff costs, which have been exacerbated by the government's introduction of the minimum wage, which those suppliers of particularly children's services, adult services, home care, elderly residential homes have all been now demanding additional finance from the council as opposed to reductions in the costs of the council. So that is why they've been reprogrammed during the year, so it can take a full view of procurement. In fact, one of the hurdles towards that is that we've managed to agree with Angie that we're going to bring in-house the whole procurement team that you put out to contract. We're going to bring it back in so we can have a seamless end-to-end review of the procurement, and that's why we haven't dropped it. We've just moved it ahead until we can get that control of the procurement.
Councillor Brockbank?
Yeah, just again on that same paragraph that my colleague touched on there about management savings on adults and children's services. Obviously, I recognise as a social worker myself that there are pressures on services in terms of agency staff and what have you. I'm just curious from the two relevant cabinet members, children's and adults, this £1.287 million of management savings, what actually are they? Is that a reduction in agency staff? Because North Tyneside has a fantastic reputation for social care provision. Has that been cut right down, and how are we going to save further on that? Because that's quite a significant amount of money.
So, certainly in relation to children's services, yes, we have reduced the number of agency staff. We've recruited a number of social workers, and that generates a saving, yes.
I know this is a technical question, but I mean, how many are we talking about here? And adult services as well. I'm interested in children and adults, because that's referenced in the report.
Councillor?
I can reply on behalf of Councillor Bell, Gary Bell, and it's only because he's very ill, and hopefully we can send our regards from the council. But there are two different types of pressures. There's a pressure on a delay, on a building delay on some of them, because we hope to have some adapted homes ready by a particular time. So all that's happened is those cases be moved back. But there's the overall pressure in the adults is one of reviewing the cases, as you'd be well aware, to ensure that we get the correct funding from the health side of it as opposed to the social side of the care. In addition, we are facing massive pressures, as I said before, from the providers of care, and in addition, massive pressures on the home care side as well, so that all of these are being hit by the minimum wage. So when we talk about the minimum wage, we're not talking about the council staff minimum wage, we're talking about the minimum wage paid by other employers who we have to use to provide these particular services. And that's where the pressure actually comes in. And if you look in the proposals for this year on Gary's, they include continuing to look at the care of the individual. But one of the things is that we'd rather delay it than rush it, because there are individuals we're talking about here, and what has to be the prime focus of us is what is the best for that client, as opposed to how quickly can we put it through. So our advice back from the officers was, while they're going through all the cases, there is a need for discussion between the health service or the CCG, forgive me, it's not my area, the health service and here to move it forward. So that's the issue. It's not the fact of not finding it, it's just making the curve further down on the basis that's in the best interest of the residents.
And children's, sorry, Chair, and children's services, can I have an answer on that, please? How many?
On what point?
So I think for adult services, I think that's a reasonably clear answer. But how many, when you're talking about the savings in Children's Services Agency staff and some of the savings you talked about here, this 1.827 million, can you tell me what that looks like in Children's Services, please?
Well, as I've already said, there are savings generated by efficiencies in children's services, and the fact that we've recruited more social workers, so we're using less agency staff, that we're training and retaining social workers, and in the long term that all produces savings. I'm not really sure what more you want in that regard.
A very simple question is, how many agency staff do we have working in Children's Services in North Tyneside?
I'll get that figure for you in writing, but I'm pretty sure it's very low now.
Is there anyone else? Councillor Wallace?
On the next page, Chairman, page 47, table 2, line D, resources available for next year, 2019 to 20, it says £156.258 million. On the previous page, though, it says total resources available 153.5 on page 45, that's in table 1. Why is there a difference there, please?
Chair, I'm not too sure, but if you look at the top line, the base budget brought forward is 152,360, and then resources available goes to 154,726. 726 is carried forward, the 154,726 is carried forward to 1920, and 150, which leaves resources available 156,28. If the figure that you quote is 151 point,
I'm looking at 2019-20, Chairman. The resources available there, fourth line down against D, is 156.258. Yeah, resources available. Now I'm looking on the previous table, table 1, where it says under 2019-20, bottom line, total resources available 153.518. I don't understand why those figures aren't the same. I'm just wondering if the Cabinet member could explain that, please.
All I can say is that different council tax issues, one's in and one's out, but you know, it's not a complicated one. I will get you a written answer.
Thank you. Because I mean, resources are resources. It's not a question of one's in, one's out. I'd have thought that those two figures ought to be the same.
We'll get it in writing, Chair, because you know, I don't want to make a statement in here, which is unusual for me, which is which, you know, where I think I'm trying to hide the truth from them.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Any more questions on that section? Right.
Yes, Chairman, sorry, if I may. In the press, when we started talking about budget matters in the autumn, figures of £41 million were bandied about coming from this council as the need to save money, yet the figures that are shown on table 2 are not like that. Why has there been such an exaggeration in the press?
We never exaggerated the press, we just speak at that moment of time, and that moment of time, that's what the figure was.
I think the table 2 demonstrates otherwise, Chairman, but I note the answer.
Well, Chair, I mean, you know, I can only speak from what it was at that particular time. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, and I'm sure you've put it on your leaflets anyway. But basically, you know, at that moment of time, that's what we thought, because we've got to bear in mind we've got the winter pressure money in this, that and the other, so we thought at that particular time that was what the shortfall was going to be. And we're not trying to, like, kill anybody, we're just telling you as it was at that particular time.
Right. Then pages 49 to 61, housing revenue account. This section isn't for consideration at this meeting. It's just here so that people can actually see what it is. So we'll now move on to pages 62 to 65. No questions? Right, then can we move on to 66 to 69? Councillor, are you on 66 to 69?
I'm on page 63, Chair, sorry.
Oh, wait.
I know, going back, I know.
You've just been fined £5 for being late.
That's right, I'm a Conservative, I like the past. Anyway, point 6.2.1, the overall response from schools was designed to maintain stability, so on and so forth. I'm just curious from the Cabinet member, how many schools specifically took part in this consultation? And I'm just curious about the consultation process. What did it look like? Was it just with head teachers, parents, governors, schools councils, youth councils, that type of thing?
The consultations through the schools forum, and we received responses from 29 schools and 2 governing bodies.
Just to go back, how many schools are in North Tyneside?
Well, we received, you asked us how many responses we received, and we received a response rate of 38%.
30%. So again, sorry, I'm not trying to be churlish here, I'm just curious, how many schools are in North Tyneside? You're the Cabinet member, how many schools are in North Tyneside?
60.
Well, I appreciate that, but as a Cabinet member, I would imagine you'd understand how many schools there are in North Tyneside.
78, I believe.
78, okay, let's take a rough guess. Thanks very much.
Right, is that all in that section? Then can we now move on to 66 to 69? Any questions in there? Councillor Hodgson.
Just a query, Chairman. On page 68, top of the page, second paragraph, consideration has been given to the use of capital receipts for redundancies and so on. I was under the impression that was the case, we always did that. Am I right in that?
But just where appropriate.
Right, you've had the answer. Councillor Wallace.
On the same note, actually, it says that consideration is being given to use of capital receipts, yet on the previous page, on table 11, it says there aren't expected to be any capital receipts, so how can that be?
Well, I mean, on page 11, if it said there's no capital receipts at that particular time, all we're saying is that consideration is to be given to use the capital receipts for redundancies and other costs arising from restructuring of the service, if we get any.
Can I ask also, with regard to capital receipts, how the expectation now is that there will not be any in the forthcoming year, whereas a year ago the expectation was that there would be over £1 million?
Chair, there's obviously capital receipts have been looked at, and it's obviously commercially sensitive information which I don't want to give out at this meeting, but I can assure the member that we are looking at further capital receipts.
Right, it's surprising therefore that the forecast is zero. And still surprising that it varies so much from last year. On the line above on table 11, please.
Last year we knew exactly what was going to be sold. This year we don't know at this moment in time.
Chairman, that's even more surprising. If last year they knew exactly what was going to be sold and the forecast was over £1 million, and yet it's now down to zero.
I think you've had an answer off the Cabinet member as much as the Cabinet member can actually give you. So I don't think it's something that we can sort of make up out of thin air. So can we move on to the next question if you've got one?
Yes, indeed, Chairman. On table 11 still, the unsupported borrowing on the top line of that table for 2019-20, the year under discussion, is £19.8 million. But last year, the forecast for that was 11.4. Can the Cabinet member tell us why there's been such a dramatic increase?
Yeah, if you look at the reports and the quarterly reports to the Cabinet, you see that some projects finished early and some have been slipped as well. So therefore, any amount of financing needed in that particular year, not used, slips forward to the next year. So the increase is to continue on with the agreed capital plan and the agreed amendments that have been made during the year, where schemes have been slipped into the next financial year, and that's why it's there. So it's a movable feast depending on the amount of work that's completed and the structures at the time.
Anyone else? Then can we now move on to pages 70 to 81? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to page 71, paragraph 8.4.1, which says that the SIPFA code requires the responsible officer to ensure members with responsibility for treasury management receive adequate training in treasury management, and especially members responsible for scrutiny. I just wondered if the Cabinet member could tell me when this training took place, who delivered it, which Cabinet members attended, and how often does it happen?
Chair, hasn't taken place yet. It is about to be announced to be taking place.
Can I ask, has it taken place previously?
No.
No. So there's been no training since when?
Probably since you were in power.
No. Can we just go back to when you were in power? How?
This time or the second time?
Sorry, 6 years you've been in control of the council. So am I right to assume that as of yet there has been absolutely no training as the
It's actually, I mean, I
requires?
can't guarantee this, and I'm going to be right in saying this, but I will get you a written answer. But it is a new recommendation from SIPFA.
But there has been no training as of yet.
Can I just suggest that the Cabinet member, not the Cabinet member, the member for Finance, isn't it, may be able to actually answer the question for you.
Well, from a scrutiny point of view...
Scrutiny point of view, I know, or something like
about,
that.
I believe it was last year, or maybe it could potentially be the year before, but there was a Treasury Management course run by Janice Gillespie, and also the staff member responsible for Treasury Management in the Council, which was attended by people within the Finance Scrutiny. I'm not sure if there's other ones that have been done with Cabinet members, but it was attended, and there was one during my time being the chair of Finance Scrutiny. I can't give you the exact year, I do apologise, but I do know it has happened. I have received that training, so I do know it exists.
Thank you. Can I just ask, given the turnover of new councillors and so on, how often is that repeated, or was that just a one-off?
At the point there was a training need identified by the group, we haven't had a skills audit again since then. We probably are due one. It is a fair challenge, and I will make sure that happens in my scrutiny committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Spillard, did you have a question?
Not a question, just as additional information, Chair, that I was offered, and I can't remember the date, and took up financial training which was delivered one-to-one by Janet Gillespie, so I'd be surprised if no one else was given that opportunity.
Right. Councillor Hodgson.
Chairman, page 75, there's reference to borrowing from Municipal Bonds Agency at lower rates than we're currently getting. Are there any negatives to that source of money?
Well, that's what, you got page 75, what number are you looking at, please?
Or 12.1, 8.12.1.
I'll get you right, but the Public Works Loan Board always offer councils a lot lower rates than banks in other places where we get loans from. It's traditionally a much lower rate.
It suggests that there may be better rates from this crowd. I just wondered if there were any negatives that would follow from that.
I mean, you know, as long as I've been a councillor since 2005, we've used the Public Loans Board for borrowing. Obviously, even more so after the banks collapsed. We used to do a bit with the banks, but it's mainly the Public Works Loan Board now. But I can, if you feel as though you need a written answer, I can get a written answer for you. Yeah, no problem. Anything by your head.
Councillor McIntyre, did I see? No, you've... Anyone else? No? Then can we move on to, sorry? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. Page 80, please, Chairman. We're still on that section, aren't we? Yes. Page 80, at the bottom of the page, it refers to the council's equity holding in the Newcastle Airport Holding Company. There's no reference, though, in this report that I can see to dividends from that company. Can the Cabinet member tell us about that, please?
Chair, I mean, obviously it's commercially sensitive information. What I can do is I can arrange a meeting with officers for a confidential briefing for you if you wish.
So is the Cabinet member saying there are no dividends being paid? It's a publicly quoted
No,
company.
what he's saying is he can arrange a confidential meeting with officers for you.
I thought that as a publicly quoted company, the information about dividends...
But then again, commercially sensitive information. I think we've got to balance it at this point between the two. Did you have another question?
Indeed, yes, Chairman.
I
Page
thought I'd
81.
escaped you before, you know.
Ah, well, tough luck. Page 81, third paragraph down. In terms of the loans, it refers to a couple of loans there. Can the Cabinet member tell us what the expected return is on those investments?
We've got it somewhere here, but we'll just we'll send that in writing to you.
Right, thank you, Chairman. And following on from that, third paragraph from the foot of that page, there are currently no losses expected. Can the Cabinet member tell us if it's expected that there'll be a profit? Was that originally envisaged? Or are we now looking at a break-even position?
No, Chair, it's just saying that there's no losses expected.
If you look down the next one, it's
so on the one below that, over the financial period plan 90 to 23 of these investments is expected to be in the region of 1 million from staff recharges, interest and dividends. So we're expecting to invest £1 million back in the council.
That's from all of these, is it? The loans and the equity holdings?
It's all those that are underway now, yeah.
Anyone else? No? Then can we move on to 82 to 83? Nothing 81, 82, 83? 84 to 87? Provisional statement of the Chief Finance Officer? Any questions? No? Then can we move on to pages 88 to 91? Overall. Yes, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. On page 91, financial risks attached to insourcing K&O Tyneside joint venture. Can someone tell me what it's going to cost to bring that joint venture back into the council?
It's going to give £1 million back in savings. It's going to return us £1 million in savings back. Yeah.
Councillor Brockbank.
Can I just, sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
I haven't finished. On the opposite box, it says this will include developing a benefits realisation framework. What is that?
I know it is a benefits realisation. It's just we're going to benefit from the scheme.
But can you any chance to get me a note on that?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Brockbank.
I thank Councillor Glindon for that response. But I mean, talking £1 million is quite a significant amount of money, and I appreciate you don't. You know, you said you give a technical answer. Surely, as cabinet member, you must have some rough punt at where that £1 million is what's going to look like, where it's going to come from? Can you give council, bear in mind this is a really important meeting, council rough area of where that £1 million is going to look like, where it's going to be made, and how we're going to save it as a borough?
I do sit on the group that's bringing this back in. And, you know, I could, if you've got 2 hours to spare, I can sit here and tell you everything, but I'll just get a written response for you. That's the easiest way. Okay.
Any more questions on that section? No? Then can we move on to page 92? No one on 92? 93 to 104? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Chair. It's page 93, under inflationary changes, pay and prices, the second line down, waste management and environmental contracts. I just wondered if the Cabinet member could explain why there's a 0 entry for 3 years and then a 2.5 million, and what that is for.
I haven't got numbered pages on mine, so can you highlight the paragraph in particular? Appendix B. As part of our 10-year, we've got a 10-year waste management strategy that's currently out to consultation. So as part of that consultation, any future 2.5 million saving, or 2.5 million in there, will be realised in there. We're currently out of consultation on our waste management strategy.
Yeah.
So any future changes to waste management strategy will be reflected in the future after consultation.
And are you saying that's a saving?
No. But it'll be, the extra cost will be in there because potential inflationary changes to the waste management contract. Of course, you know that recycling rates change, and our contract with the recycling company is related to inflation and related to the cost of recycling. Sometimes goes up, sometimes goes down. At one point we were receiving money from the stuff we were recycling, so now went back up, and that we pay money to the recycling people. It's all based on inflationary rates of recycling. So,
And that could potentially be £2.5 million in 1 year.
you can get a technical answer on the 2.5 million in the 22-23 budget, but
Yeah.
that's a technical question. And just to make a point, there's been a lot of technical questions tonight that councillors obviously have had the chance to ask in advance, but haven't.
Thank you. Yes, well, an answer in writing would be great. Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. On page 104, the second box down, we talked about the pressure. That pressure, that's obviously different to the saving. So how can we have a saving and a pressure?
Can I just ask, 104 is the second paragraph down, the second block down. Quota changes required at the fallout of the KRJVV. Is that what you're talking about? Right, well that's... shows the cost pressure, increased demand for external... Well, I'll answer that in writing because I'm sure the answer that I gave you before is the same answer I'm going to give you now, but I won't. I'll get it in writing, okay?
Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you very much, Chair. Going back to page 97, the Clinical Commission Group pressure, finance pressure, 0.667 million. I'm just curious, how was that agreed? So how did that come about, that agreed pressure? Who agreed it and why?
If you recall, there was a dispute between ourselves and the CCG, around about adding over a number of years to about 1.2 million. And so the negotiation was done by the officers and the chief executive with the CCG, which resulted in a return of approximately 667, which we've now put back into the budgets with a view to looking to the long term to where the funding comes through, because we've still got funding coming through that we haven't agreed yet between them. So it was done by the officers, and it was, if you remember at the time, there was possibility of a court case, and it was thought prudent on legal advice and by the discussion of the officers that a settlement was the best way forward, and both sides moved towards a settlement.
Thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
I can tell you're thrilled, Chairman. Page 93 again.
Could Councillor Hodgson turn his mic off again? Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay, thank you. Page 93, the inflationary changes again. I wonder if the Cabinet member could explain or clarify the PFI inflation line. We will have 0, then 600,000, 600,000, and then 0 again. I thought one of the alleged benefits of PFIs was that this was evened out, that it was entirely predictable.
As that in writing.
Thank you, Chairman.
Is that it on that section? Can we move on to pages 105 to 107? Oh, Councillor Brockburn, you were nearly
Brockbank, you're going to get it.
Aye, yeah.
Chair, you're going to get it one day. Page 105, the next paragraph, the second paragraph, leading sector-led improvement. Obviously, I mean, I recognise, associated with myself, the hugely impressive abilities of North Tyneside Social Services. I'm just curious about the proposals for £100,000. Just in terms of efficiency savings, they've said that they're going to be practice leaders or practice and partners in practice, or whatever the current name is. I'm just curious, that £100,000 worth of efficiency savings, is that going to be offset against the money that's been required by the council for social services to save in terms of children's services?
It's an income stream that we hope to generate through the Partners in Practice programme, which under that agreement that we have with the DV, we offer our excellent services to local authorities whose children's services require improvement, but there are a number of other authorities who we think would still require and seek advice and expertise from us, and we estimate that we can market that service commercially and bring in around £100,000 a year.
I thank the Cabinet member for just going back on page 102. Sorry, then some of the pressures, 1.367 million in children's services. My question, I suppose, is then, I'm very pleased that the Labour Party is endorsing the free market capitalist economy and wants to advertise our abilities. But that £100,000 then that we're going to bring in, could you then say that's going to be offset against the £1.367 million worth of efficiencies?
At the moment, so it's what we hope to raise when we go out to market and market the scheme. So yes, it will be income for future years.
So can we just be clear that the 1.367 million expected efficiencies in children's services could be offset against this 100? So in fact, it's 1.267 million that might be projected.
Well, we've got to raise the money first, and it's a proposal, it's an idea that we're working on producing that income.
Sorry, can I just say it's not 0.3 efficiency, it's a budget pressure which is built into the charts that you saw before. In the budget, there's two different issues.
Yes.
I appreciate it, but if you're bringing 100,000 in from outside, then clearly that's going to
comes
alleviate
off
some of
the bottom line.
the need to make those efficiencies.
But on the build-up to the budget, to get the end, these have been taken into account on the budget pressures.
Well, that's just,
So this is additional
Seconds out.
finance coming on the other side.
Seconds out, can we move on to the next section? Right, I think that's been well debated. Pages 2 to 5 of the business case. Any questions? No? Then can we move on to 6 to 9? Any questions? No? Move on to 10 to 13. Any questions? Slow down. Oh, right. Speed up. I think I'll put it to the vote. Right. I'm now on pages 14 to 17. Right, 18 to 21. Right. 22 to 25. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 23, the bottom paragraph of the centre block, resulting in a further vehicle not being needed. I'm just wondering if the Cabinet member could tell me how many bin wagons that would actually leave.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it would leave enough to service our needs, and our rationalisation of the bin wagons and the new rounds has ensured that we know that this bin lorry can go and still meet our needs.
Right. And can I just ask, obviously, there are, I mean, I don't know how many there are either, because I only ever see the one, but it's...
Might not be the same one.
Yeah, probably. I just wondered if any consideration's been given and a risk assessment done to the fact that obviously the remaining wagons are going to have to do more, and the potential for breakdown and so on, which on a fortnightly waste collection schedule could be quite catastrophic, you know, if that was to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Consideration certainly has been given to that, and we were assured by officers that we can absolutely still meet the needs, and including should any situation arise where one lorry is out of service, that with the remaining lorries that we have, we can still meet the needs to service all rounds.
Right. Would it be possible
We can still meet the needs to service all rounds, even with that lorry going, and even with any situation arising where we might not have full operation.
You're drifting into how the department works now, rather than the budget measures.
No, I'm just wondering, obviously, for that to have been put forward as a saving, there must have been a risk assessment, and I'm just wondering if we could possibly have a copy of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson.
Chairman, we have three massive external pressures on the Environment Department imposed on us from external sources: the air quality, carbon reduction and plastics control. Is the department aiming to do anything on those subjects next year? And if so, will the cost of that, or is the cost of that incorporated in the budget you've presented?
Could you tell me what page you're on?
Sorry, page 23 I'm on.
I think you're stretching to say that's within the budget, because page 23 is solely on waste reduction and the business case for waste reduction. However, that's not within this business case, so I think you're stretching to include that there, Councillor Hodgson.
Plastics is waste, is it not?
Plastics is waste, so plastics is part of our 10-year waste review and part of our recycling review that we're currently undertaking. It's, however, not included in this business case, which is a £100,000 saving with the reduction of a bin lorry and 3 members of staff, none of which are compulsory redundancies, all are voluntary, which are going. So it's absolutely not included within this business case that we go in here. You're talking about any future pressures on future years, and it's not included in this business case, therefore it's not a reasonable question to ask.
Chairman, air quality and carbon reduction are with us now, and I'm just questioning, is that mentioned somewhere else in the papers then?
It's not in this business case. Did you have two more questions from the external pressures created by the government? Any more questions? No? Can we move on to pages 26 to 29? to 33. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 31, sport and leisure. The middle box, second box down, where it says the service is currently benefiting from a change in the VAT rules that had previously restricted local authorities. That means that the authority no longer needs to levy VAT on the sporting facilities. I think it was mentioned at the budget scrutiny group that something like £400,000 has been refunded to the authority. Can the Cabinet member just confirm if I've remembered that correctly?
I'm not sure what the refund is from 2018, but we'll get that in writing.
Thank you. My second question following on from that is, charges are not being reduced. Is there a risk that customers could come back to the authority and seek a refund of the VAT that ought not to have been charged?
In my opinion, that's not the case. I think we need to remember that sport and leisure is a subsidised service anyway, so the change in the VAT rules will mean the subsidy is reduced. It's more manageable, and it wouldn't be the case if we hadn't reduced the charges. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that in light of the attack on local government we've had from the government, we have not considered this yet cutting the service, which might have been the case had we not had the VAT rules come in.
But the VAT is charged, I understand, on individual admission fees, individual passes, subscriptions, annual passes, whatever category of sale it is to the customer. The VAT is charged on that sale. So therefore, a customer, say, paying £1 for something, will pay £1.20 if it includes the VAT. That VAT has now been refunded to the authority. What I'm asking is, could the customers come back to the authority and say, well, that has been wrongly charged? I'm not suggesting that the authority was at fault in charging it. I'm simply saying it clearly was wrongly charged, since the Revenue and Excise is now, HMRC will have refunded that money. Is there a risk that the customers could come back to the authority and seek a refund?
We've looked at that carefully. I can't give you that assurance, Councillor Wallace. What I can also say is what is clear, that all the value of that VAT does go back to the customer.
But not to the individual customers who made the purchases. Could I ask the lawyers perhaps to comment on this, Chairman?
Would you like to comment?
I'm getting an indication from my colleague in finance that it's not an issue, but I think this is something for a written response.
Thank you.
If it helps as well, it was actually the London Borough of Ealing who first brought the case to the European Court of Justice. All of the documents associated with that case and the implications for the local authority are contained on the HMRC website, which is available for everybody to have a look at.
I think the note that was offered will suffice. Thank you, Chairman.
Anyone else? No? Then can we move on to pages 34 to 37? 38 to 42? Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you. Page 39, Chair, in relation to the budget proposal for fit for purpose, how we organise. I'm just curious, the second paragraph down, North Tyneside obviously has a strong record of securing external funding. I'm just wondering, bearing in mind that the provision of children's services under the Children Act 1989 is a statutory provision, I'm just really curious about what external funding streams the local authority envisage bringing in to the provision of children's services.
Well, I think we've already talked about the partners in practice. There are other schemes such as troubled families that will bring in income. But this business case is really about the savings that we hope to make through reduced legal fees, professional fees, and charges to third-party organisations. So we mentioned Capita, the childcare IT systems. We hope to save 32,000 in professional fees, and also in relation to energy for procurement, we hope to save 18,000.
I thank the Cabinet Member for that answer. In terms of the partners in practice, obviously you're talking about £100,000 envisaged, not actually allocated. What money is then being allocated for the Troubled Families programme that be brought in the North Tyneside?
We're projecting, I think, from memory, about £265,000.
Thank you very much. Just going down to the next paragraph, then we're talking about projected savings. I'm really curious, as a children's social worker, that North Tyneside Council can, with impunity, say that they're going to save £100,000 in legal fees, bearing in mind the 26-week deadline under the Children and Families Act 2014. 26, I'm sure the Cabinet members are aware of this, from removal through to adoption. How has that been calculated, 100,000? How are you going to save that money? If a child needs to be removed and adopted, how have you calculated that?
I'll provide that answer in writing.
Very much. In terms of professional fees, what are those professional fees, please? It's £60,000, quite a significant amount.
Again, I'll provide a breakdown in writing.
Okay, moving on to Section 17 assistance, £8,000 of reduction in that. I assume the Cabinet member obviously knows what Section 17 assistance is, so how are you going to, what's the current fee and how are you going to save £8,000 of it?
Again, I'll provide that answer in writing.
And my final question, which I'm absolutely certain I know the answer of, and there's no money put aside against it, support accommodation provisions, what is the current cost now, and what savings are suggesting how you're going to do that. Bear in mind we have a statutory obligation to the most vulnerable in our society, and I'm sure you could provide that in writing.
If that's what you wish, yes.
Yeah, we will.
Anyone else on that section? Can I just say that we're now getting to the stage where there's actually more technical questions coming in than the total vote for, or the total consultation returns for the £24 that the Police Commissioner has asked for. So I think the technical question side is getting a bit ridiculous, bearing in mind that prior to this meeting, we were in the hundreds of technical questions, not a handful, hundreds. So can we move on and think before you actually start to ask technical questions? Let's see if we can start asking some questions that aren't actually linked to technical information. I'm sure that between now and the time that your budget can come back, you still have the time to ask technical questions of the individual officers, as has been stated.
I'm talking about the most vulnerable in our society here.
I'm quite aware.
I think that's a fair question.
I've worked in the community area for 40-odd years, so I know exactly where you're coming from. Can we now move on to pages 43 to 46? '47 to 50. We're now on pages 108 to we are, aren't we? Right. We're now back on the main report, and it's pages 108 to 110. Draft investment plan. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 110. Halfway down the housing columns, the asbestos works, where there's a sum every year. I just wondered if the Cabinet member could explain why that's there, and with the decent home standards, I didn't think there would be anywhere left that needed asbestos removed among the council properties.
That is actually in the housing budget, but I can answer it for you. Part of the money is because people who worked in the 1970s and are now actually suffering from the disease are putting in claims. And if you'd watched the television, there was a very interesting programme on it.
Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions? Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just check that there is no money for coastal regeneration shown in the investment plan?
Chair, there's schemes for coastal regeneration to go ahead. What we're saying is until that money is in place, we will not go ahead with that scheme. But there is schemes there. There is probably money, well, there will be money available, but as we don't have it at this moment in time, it won't show as a sum of money against that particular item.
Thank you. And was the capital money of £3.5 million in the current year all used up?
Which line are you talking about?
I'm still on the topic of coastal regeneration. I'm asking whether the money in the...
Well, it would help if you give us a page number, and it would also help if you give us a scheme number.
The scheme is not there. Okay, that's...
Any more questions on that one? No? Then we move on to 111 to 118. Right? 119 to 132. 133 to 134. 135 to 136. Yes, Councillor Austin. Have I jumped ahead of you, or you're on the right one?
Yeah, I was keeping up.
You're a fast lady.
All right, thank you, Chair. It is page 135, second paragraph down. And again, it's more detail about the engagement with the residents. I have about 5 questions, so I'll just do them individually because it'd be too much to expect for...
These aren't the same 5 questions you asked before, though.
A couple of them might be the ones I wasn't allowed to ask before, and I'm asking them now because I was told to do that. So, the first question...
Right, go on. I'll let you go until I get sick.
Thank you, Chair.
It's an interesting view of democracy.
It mentions face-to-face discussions. I wonder if the Cabinet member could tell us what initially the residents were told. For example, were they told that £41 million had to be saved?
Yes.
And that wasn't the case.
I think it was stated before that it was at that particular time of the engagement.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
As you're very aware, having been around for quite a while, things move, and the budgets are very flexible throughout the year.
Right, thank you, Chair. The second question is, what options for council tax increases were the residents presented with, and which option did the majority choose?
The face-to-face sessions, there was a couple of options put to residents, and they were invited to come up with their own options as to how we dealt with the council tax.
Can I ask, though, what the specific options that were put, were they offered the options of choosing a particular council tax rise? And what did they say to that?
Yes, and I can honestly say that there was mixed feelings about what the proposals were, and we talked through that, and they agreed that they would sooner pay the higher rate of council tax to provide and ensure that they got the services in North Tyneside.
Right. Do you have any idea on the numbers?
I think the answer is partly on 136, page 136.
All right, I haven't got that yet. Thank you.
No, 136 is just the online one, actually.
Yes, I'm particularly referring to the face-to-face. The 136 is just the online engagement. But anyway, can I ask the question I tried to ask earlier, was there any specific engagement on the issue of parking with the face-to-face sessions?
The face-to-face sessions, all members were asked to volunteer. Yes, but we went into parking, we went into all of the issues that were facing residents within North Tyneside, and they all had the opportunity to comment in different workshops, and they had cabinet members, they had officers on the tables at the time to answer the technical questions.
Were there records kept of those comments and so on?
Yes, we always keep records of any of our resident panel, any of our consultations we do with residents.
Right, thank you. Again, page 135, the 7th paragraph down, stating that 134 people took part, either face-to-face or online. Can I ask how that compares with last year's numbers of people that took part?
Yes, there was less that took part. However, the actual quantity in terms of the value of the communication that we had was very valuable. And what we did do, the summer ones, the summer consultation that we did with regard to budget, they were very valuable as well. So in terms of, because we did that over 29 locations within the borough, and I think that proved to be valuable.
Right. Would you be able to tell me how many fewer there were this year than last year?
I haven't got that figure in front of me, but I can supply for you.
Thank you. And the last question, it mentions, and you've said yourself, that residents were asked for suggestions themselves. Could you tell me, were any of the residents' suggestions, or any of them going to be implemented? And in that case, what were they?
We certainly took every value that was valued, the input that we had from residents, and yes, they went to the Mayor and the lead member briefings on the SLT for consideration.
So are they going to be implemented, and what were those suggestions?
I would have to get that in writing for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Then can we move on to pages, hang on, have I done 135, 136? Yeah, 137, 142. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 141, the strategic reserve. Why has it been decided to increase that from 6 million to 10 million, please? The second paragraph down on page 141.
Could you just repeat that question? I couldn't quite hear it, actually.
Yeah, sure. Why has it been decided to increase the strategic reserve from £6 million up to £10 million?
We're not increasing it, it's actually £14 million now, but we're dropping it down to £10 million, because £10 million in the days, I hate to say this, under the remit of Brexit, we don't know what we'll be using, so all we're saying is that we don't want it to go below £10 million.
So the reason is Brexit.
One
Okay,
of
the
the
economy's
reasons.
doing well, hashtag despite Brexit.
Chair, that's one of the reasons, right? Which is, if you can't turn around and say that it's not going to affect this council, it's going to affect all councils. It just depends which way it goes. But either way it goes, it's still going to affect councils. The country is losing finance out of the country left, right, and centre. While there's jobs going, there's going to be people put out of jobs, people listen. We're hoping to get a job down there. Aren't going to get a job now because they're moving. People are shaking their heads over this. This is true. This is true. You're the Brexiteers.
Indeed, I'll take no lessons from Nissan, who said we should join the euro, and if they were going to leave, we may all remember that one. So,
well, I hope you remember this one when it happens.
Councillor Blockbank.
I admit that I'm a newcomer to this for the first time. So £14 million we're talking about in strategic reserves. Could the Cabinet member then tell me where in statute it says we have to have £14 million in reserves?
It's a 151 officer's choice.
So it's a subjective opinion rather than a statutory requirement?
It's not a subjective opinion, it's a professional opinion.
Well, I've got a lot of professional opinions as a social worker. It doesn't mean they're always right, but I mean, I'm just saying, so 14 million is a subjective opinion.
Can I just stop you there, Councillor? We're not here to criticise officers, and if you persist in that tone of...
I'm asking a question about...
No, you went into criticising officers there. You're criticising a professional opinion, and that is a criticism of an officer within this council. So...
Chair of the council goes to page 139. Number 4, the role of the head finance officer explains it there anyway, so.
Chair, I'm just asking the question, fairly new member, I'm just asking why it's 14 million. I think it's a fair question. I'm sure my residents would like to know the quick answer.
It is a fair question, but it's not a fair question when you start to criticise a professional opinion. You did. We will move on. We'll move on to pages 143, or page 143. Any questions? Page 144 to 159. 160 to 166. Now can I invite members to have any final questions which do not relate to any specific pages appearing in the papers for tonight's meeting? Councillor Wallace.
Yes, Chairman, it was a question that I attempted to ask before. The holding report at the start of this budget process referred to an autumn statement to be issued on the 26th of November 2018, and my question was, what was ascertained from that statement? What was the assessment that affected the contents of the budget report?
Chair, the autumn statement, we've got nothing out of it.
Well, I can't even find an autumn statement, Chairman. I have looked carefully. I mean, there's no link provided. As far as I can see, the last autumn statement was actually in the autumn of 2016, so I'm curious to know why the holding report referred to an autumn statement that doesn't seem to exist.
Are we talking about the autumn statement issued by the government?
There was a budget in October.
Yes.
The last statement called an autumn statement was in October 2016. I can't understand why the holding report referred to one expected on the 26th of November.
We'll get you a copy of it.
That's the easiest
Super,
way if you
thank
get
you.
a copy of it. Anyone else got any more questions on that? Councillor Hodgson.
Chairman, can I just come back to that question for the Cabinet member about what we're going to do this coming year on air quality, carbon reduction and plastic reductions? What plans have you got incorporated in the budget you've presented tonight?
It's not a matter for the budget, but on air quality, of course, we received legal direction from the government, which will force us into a certain clean air charging zone, which will be going to consultation on the 25th of February on plastic-free, on plastics. The Mayor made plastics priority. We've already made reductions in the use of plastic in North Tyneside, and we will continue this year. And on carbon reduction, we are well ahead of carbon reduction targets, which are going to be implemented in the next 3 years, and we will continue to beat them targets and go ahead of them.
Anyone else got any questions? Final questions? Burning questions? You pardon?
Could I just ask, do we need to retain these papers for the next meeting? Or will there be
You're
new
jumping
papers?
ahead again.
Pardon?
You're jumping ahead again.
Well, I don't know what you're going to say.
Right, seeing as there's no more questions, can I now adjourn this meeting until the 21st of February? Can I remind all members to ensure they bring all the papers that they have been considering tonight with them to the next meeting, as there will be no copies passed out at the next meeting because the cost of the copies increases the cost of this meeting tonight. Right? As I said earlier, members are able to submit objections to the proposals of the Mayor and Cabinet up to 4 p.m. on Tuesday the 19th of February. Any objections received will be considered at the reconvened council meeting on the 21st of February. And at that, I declare the meeting closed. And people, enjoy yourself going home, have a safe journey, because if some of you came in earlier on, you would have seen the nice crash further up the road, and I don't want any of you to be missing from the next meeting. Thank you very much. Good evening.